Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's lecture class. We are going to evaluate arguments, and in this, it's the assessing of assessments. So, we're going to focus primarily on critical thinking. Now, in describing critical thinking, we want to talk about how is critical thinking described and why it's important. So basically about critical thinking, it is the objective analysis and evaluation of an issue or in order to form a judgment. So we all make judgment calls, and when using critical thinking skills, in order to make a better judgment call, we have to analyze the issue and evaluate it. So in this slide, I'm just going to read it for best clarity. So the idea of critical thinking actually derives from roots in ancient Greek. Kritikos, I'm saying that stupid. Kritikos, meaning discerning judgment, and criterion, meaning standard. So discerning judgment that meets certain standards. In Webster's New World Dictionary, the relevant entry reads, characterized by careful analysis and judgment, and is followed by critical in its strictest sense, implies an attempt to objective judgment so as to determine both merits and faults. We might personally define critical thinking as thinking that examines thinking to improve thinking, and that is food for thought. It is explicitly aimed at well-founded judgment. It uses intellectual standards to determine strengths and weaknesses of thinking. I want to go back real quick to that one section where it says that we might define critical thinking as thinking that examines thinking to improve thinking. So the goal in critical thinking is to improve thinking. And so, in order to improve our thinking, we must first examine how we think, what we think about, and where that mindset or thinking process that we currently have leads us to. If we want that to improve, then we have to think about our thinking first, and therefore make plans and judgment calls as to how to improve that thinking process. And so to improve that thinking process, we're going to go over specificities. I don't think that's a word. Uh, really necessary things to keep in mind when striving to improve critical thinking. So one of those would be clarity. Now, clarity has the word clear in it. Clarity requires clear, concise understanding of whatever subject is being considered. So, just as an example, take a presidential debate as an example. Is what the speaker saying, does what the speaker say make sense? Is it clear and concise? Do you, me, all of us, the audience, understand his or her point and why they are making it? So that's just one example, and we're going to use this example in every single bullet point here with clarity, credibility, relevance, etc. So with credibility, basic definition, personal definition of credibility is basically, does the subject of your consideration have credibility? In other words, what or who is the source of your argument? Does that source provide accepted truths? And we can have tons of examples of this, but just going back to the presidential debate, a lot of candidates throw out a lot of statistics, but the question is, where did these stats come from? Where did the statistics derive from? A lot of people could say, you know, global warming is a big issue, or it's a thing, yada, yada, yada. But who really knows? Oh, no, wait. They could say global warming is a big deal. I heard from my cousin's brother, who's okay, that doesn't make sense. My cousin's friend, who is a scientist, say that it's a big deal. So it's not a very credible resource. Or I heard someone say that this, and so you got to make sure that the person, you or the person you're having this conversation, discussion, argument with, has credible sources. So going on to the next bullet point with relevance. Relevance, in the many arguments, people change the subject and oftentimes never get back on topic. So the question is, or with relevance, when they change the subject like this or they get off topic, it doesn't allow the argument to be resolved. Going back to the example of statistics being brought up in presidential candidate speeches, are these stats relevant to what he or she is arguing for? Do they coincide with their position? It's very important for your subject to remain relevant to the argument, whatever subject you bring up. Otherwise, it does not complete what you're trying to go for. So we're going for completeness. Basically, with completeness, does the joke have a punchline? Does your argument have a period at the end? Or does it simply end without you making the point you came there to make? Completeness is important to finish your thought and make your points clear. I've noticed a lot in presidential debates, especially when arguing with one another, that candidates would be, they would be going on one subject for a while and then before finishing their thought, switch subjects completely. And this honestly never helps in any communicative sense, and it never gets their point made. Along with all of these examples of critical thinking skills that are necessary comes soundness. Now, with soundness, does your argument have sound facts to support it? I've noticed that soundness and credibility and completeness go hand in hand. They all really do, but with soundness, is what you're arguing for valid? And are its premises true? Going back to the candidate debate, presidential candidates, what's the plan and where's the money coming from? A lot of candidates have great positions, and sure, the facts they include to support those positions sound nice, but is it all sound? That may seems redundant, but does it make sense to support them when they don't mention, or to support when they don't mention what the plan is for these issues and where the money is coming from? So, for an argument to be good, it has to have sound facts and the premise must be sound and true. So, one example of using critical thinking in situations has to do with emotion and reasoning, and reason, or emotion versus reason. A lot of us in arguments get caught up in our emotions and we completely forget about critical thinking or reasoning. Now these both go hand in hand. Obviously, in any argument you have to be emotionally invested, or your argument will just be dead. But it also must include a reasoning. And in this slide, I wanted to include this little video that shows the emotional section of reasoning. And so I'm going to show that now, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's see if I can get this right where I need it. Okay, this is a comedian named Ben Bailey, and he's going to talk about an experience he had on his job that was complete lack of reasoning and all based on emotion. And I think that we can all relate to this. So watch and we'll talk about it.
On one particular occasion, we were sitting in traffic on 3rd Avenue for the 150th day in a row. We continue to choose 3rd Avenue, despite the fact that they're building a hospital and a pipeline and a freaking amusement park in the middle of 3rd Avenue. We are guaranteed at least 40 minutes of going absolutely nowhere. So I'm already irritated by the traffic. To make matters worse, there's an electrician in a van behind me who doesn't seem to understand how a traffic jam works. Right? He seems to be under the impression that somewhere all the way at the front of the traffic jam, there is a man in a very wide car who has just nodded off at the wheel. And that if he, the electrician, can only honk long and loud enough, he will wake the man in the wide car, and we'll all be on our merry way immediately. To make matters even worse, the electrician and his horn have impeccable timing. They're as good as the owl, if not a little better. He will only honk if I have just begun speaking, which means I have to stop speaking and start all over again. So I'm talking. I'm like, located in downtown. What is this guy's problem? Let's try that again. Located in downtown. Son of a bitch! I try to sneak one in real quick before he could honk. I'm like, located in downtown. How does he know?
Okay, so something I enjoyed about that video is that he said, this man doesn't seem to understand how a traffic jam works. Reason, he doesn't understand, it's not clear, or he's just stupid. And he says that it seems that he thinks that there's a big truck that's so wide it covers all the lanes, and that the man driving the truck is nodded off, and that if he can only honk loud enough, that it would wake the man in the truck, and we'd all be on our merry way. So obviously, according to his definition of what was going on in that other the electrician's head, he was completely devoid of reason and was basing everything off of emotion. And I think if you or any of you have been in a traffic jam, it can be pretty emotional, and we often lose reason, especially if it's you're very late for an appointment. So it's important to have emotion when coming up with an argument, but also reason plays a very, in my opinion, dominant part in that argument, that you have to have a logical, concise reason utilizing all of the points mentioned, clarity, credibility, relevance, completeness, and soundness, to have a good argument. But you must also be emotional about it. But don't rely on only one or the other, or you won't get anywhere. So that is my short presentation about critical thinking and why it's important. This is just a small, just the one reference that I used at the very beginning regarding critical thinking, found off Shark. And yeah, that's it. So thank you.